Before we continue with the life of the terribly abused Indian slum girl, Ifat Khan, let us take short break and try to answer the above important question: why Muslim youth join the Islamic Caliphate, which internationally known as ISIS. Non-Muslims understandably wonder why thousands of young Muslim boys and girls seemingly leave their safe havens in Europe, America, Canada, Australia only to travel to Turkey and from there, enter into either Syria or Iraq to be conscripted into service of the new Muslim Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's army. Likewise, what is the draw factor enticing the tide of thousands upon thousands of young Arabs come as flood from all over Arabian Peninsula, Levant and North Africa and join ISIS? Among the common murmurings, one often heard is why ISIS flies a black flag. The answers can be found in the following authentic hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. Thawban said, the Prophet said, 3 men will be killed at the place where your treasure is. Each of them will be the son of a caliph, and none of them will get hold of the treasure. Then black banners will come out of the east. If you see him, go and give him your allegiance, even if you have to crawl over ice, because he is the Caliph of Allah, the Mahdi, the awaited one. Sunan Ibn Majah, Volume 3, Hadith number 4084. According to this hadith, at the last days, a group of Muslim Mujahideen fighters headed by the last Islamic Caliph will come from the east, Afghanistan, ISIS being the offshoot of Al-Qaeda, holding black banners, or black flags. When Muslims see the Caliph or hear about him, they are duty-bound to go and give him their allegiance, even if they have to crawl over the ice, the winter terrain of Europe, Canada and the USA, or the sands of the arid Sahara Desert of Arabia, because he is the last Islamic Caliph of Allah and the awaited one. Most probably, such a person might be the false prophet that predicted in the Book of Revelation who will support the Antichrist, the beast. He will be possessed by the devil who in the past possessed the false prophet of Arabia, Muhammad. In one of his most recent sermons, Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi promised his followers that he was going to take over the 2 Islamic Qiblas, being the Black Kaaba in Mecca and the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, built on the ruined site of the Jewish Temple of Solomon. Many people confuse the Al-Aqsa Mosque with the Dome of the Rock, but these are separate Islamic shrines in Jerusalem. In essence, Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has plans to invade the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the State of Israel. He believes that if these 2 holy Islamic cities fall into his hands, then the entire Muslim world will be bound under his caliphate. Many dismiss him as a dreamer, considering that such military excursions will have to go up against a 50-country coalition led by the US. If you take into account the fierceness of his followers who actually look forward to die for him, such threats should be given more weight. In a very short period, the Caliph has expanded his influence to control half of Iraq and half of Syria. Recently, the Islamic terrorist groups in Sinai, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Nigeria, Somalia, Pakistan and Afghanistan have allied themselves with his caliphate. Millions of Muslims all over the world believe in him and are either trying to make their way to him or supporting a network that will assist in the endeavor. Unless the world begins to call a spade what it is, the problem of terrorism will never ever be solved. Instead of calling them terrorists, the world should call them exactly what they call themselves, true and faithful Muslims, and according to what they believe in and sincerely practice, Islam, and whom their role model is, the Prophet Muhammad. These people aren't terrorists, they are true Muslims. Terrorists are criminals and their right place is behind bars. These people are worse than terrorists, but still they are followers of a religion, and that religion is called Islam, and what they do is documented in big letters in their religious texts, the Quran and the books of the Sunnah, the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, which they believe are divinely revealed to their Prophet Muhammad. It is a source of wonder why the free world will not see the writing on the wall and discern the signs of approaching disasters. Why no one wants to read these Islamic books and study the life of the Prophet Muhammad and understand how he spreads his religion through terror and how he treats his enemies. It will give clues as to how the early Muslim Mujahideen movement, in a short period of time, had spread all over Arabia and North Africa and taking all the Christian lands until they reached Spain, Vienna and India. It was done through jihad and at the point of a sword. During that early period, Muslim Mujahideen had killed 60 million Christians, 80 million Hindus, 10 million Buddhists, and uncountable numbers of Jews. This same belief system now motivates thousands of Muslims to flock together from all over the world and join the new Caliphate jihadists' army. Muhammad taught his followers to hate the Jews and Christians and make life difficult for them. His Quran commands them to kill them if they refuse Islam or subjugation by Islamic rule, Surah 9:29 and Surah 9:5. The recent behavior of a group of illegal immigrants toward Christians speaks volumes about their deeply rooted hatred, nurtured by Islam. When the boat smuggling them had reached the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, the Muslims who were the majority, threw 16 African Christians into the sea, enjoying the sight of them drowning. The same very Muslims who escaped from poverty-stricken and war-torn countries in the Middle East and Africa make their way to Christian countries in Europe supposedly to seek asylum and a better life. The latest terrorist plot foiled by the French police revealed that a 27-year-old Algerian was about to blow up 2 large Christian churches in Paris and kill their congregations during Sunday services. In July 26, 2016, 2 Muslim knifemen embarked inside a church hall in northern France and beheaded an elderly Catholic priest in cold blood while other parishioners and nuns who were taken hostages watched in horror the slaughter of their religious leader. 9 Iraqi asylum seekers gang-raped a 28-year-old drunk woman in Austrian capital, Vienna for 2 hours as she pleaded "No, I don't want this," after luring her from her friends on New Year's Eve of 2015. The woman, identified as Sabine K., was blind drunk when they dragged her to their apartment. Prosecutors charged the 9 Iraqi men with abuse of a defenseless person and rape in a very humiliating and agonizing way for the victim. Article by Alan Hall for Mail Online, February 22, 2017. If you hate Christians, why then do you go to their countries to seek their help? Why don't you go to the rich Muslim countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other UAE Gulf countries and seek their help? Each and every Muslim knows the answer to the second question. Muslims smuggle themselves in thousands each day to the shores of Europe. They undertake huge risk because they know that they will be rescued from the raging waves. They are positively sure they will be received and given shelter, food, and medical care. Then, they will be accepted as displaced refugees and resettled in a Western country. If, on the other hand, the same Muslims manage to smuggle themselves into a rich Muslim country in the Middle East, they will be arrested and sent to jail. Inside the interrogation cells they will be flogged and tortured until they reveal the countries of their origin. As quickly as possible, without trial, they will be literally chained to their seats in a plane and deported. Once again we learned that ISIS has recently beheaded 28 Ethiopian Christians in Libya because they refused to accept Islam or pay the jizya. A few months ago 21 Coptic Christians also were beheaded by ISIS on a Libyan beach. 21 Copts alongside 28 Ethiopians and 16 Arab or African Christians is 65 innocent people killed by Muslims for no crimes whatsoever, except the sin of being Christians. The Lord said, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," Romans 12:19. I could be wrong, but I do believe that the drowning of the 800 Muslims on April 19, 2015, whose boat capsized, might have been divine payback for the blood of the 65 innocent Christians. 800 Muslims died and 28 were rescued. 2 of them were arrested by the Italian police on charges of human trafficking. According to a recent report, in a week 11,000 Muslims arrived in Italy. It seems that the white continent might be blacked out very soon by the steady influx of these illegal African and Arab immigrants. When they settled in Europe instead of integrating in the society and respect the people who opened their country and welcomed them, they want to harm them and sometimes plot to kill them. In the New Year Eve of 2016, in one single French city more than 800 girls were either raped, groped, or robbed by Syrian refugees. The movie The Child Bride and the Old Man of Arabia became controversial even before its release. Critics anticipated a watershed of resentment among the Muslims, leading to mass protests all over the world, erupting from urban centers. Some predicted that militants might retaliate with large-scale terrorist events targeting movie theaters and public areas. Despite the criticism and the warnings, the movie was released in selected theaters in the USA and Canada. Immediately thereafter, Muslims filled the streets with protest marches across America, Canada, and many European countries. They unilaterally demanded an immediate halt to the screening of the movie. Muslim clerics, scholars, imams, mullahs, and Islamic countries' leaders appeared on TV denouncing the movie. Muslim intellectuals wrote ranting and raving articles in newspapers attacking the director, producers, and actors of the provocative movie. They claimed that the scenes of child rape and abuse had nothing to do with Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. Assertions that the Prophet of Islam had never practiced thigh-ing with his wife Aisha were common. Some claimed to have not known or hear of such disgraceful practices in Muslim societies. In their protest marches, placards declared that Muslim men were incapable of such perverse behavior and would not stoop to such evil acts with children. What outraged Muslims more was the part of the movie, which showed the brutal, painful, barbaric, and sickening way the Indian slum girl was raped as a child by her octogenarian husband. The scene showed the old geezer as a savage who was devoid of any human feelings. The scene also had the effect of allowing the audience to visualize and come to terms with what was previously merely a concept. The scene in the movie was so graphic that viewers would walk out of the movie theater with revulsion for Islamic customs and the Prophet of Islam. Most of the viewers had already seen the internet videos of the graphic beheadings of those 5 Westerners, 21 Coptic Christians, 28 Ethiopian Christians, and the immolation of the Jordanian pilot by the terrorists of ISIS, but the brutal rape of the slum girl stirred up passions of wrath exceeded all the previous brutalities. The victims in all the previous murders were adults, but the victim in this case was a mere child, one society had betrayed. The scene centered on the human interaction between the rapist and his victim, in close detail. Viewers were allowed to see, in graphic detail, what was previously only talked about in low voices, and shrouded in mystery and rumor. Before the movie, viewers used to read or hear every now and then about a 10-year-old Yemeni girl who had been raped to death by her bridegroom on her wedding night, or a 9-year-old Saudi girl being divorced twice, or a 5-year-old Sudanese girl succumbing to genital mutilation, etc. The director took pains to show the trauma the little girl went through when the old man tried penile penetration into her underdeveloped juvenile vagina. The streams of blood coupled with the facial expressions of the perpetrator and the victim caused many to feel nausea and discomfort. The movie showed clearly, the old man continuing his assault on his child bride, despite the excessive bleeding until he had ejaculated. Although the blood was running from her private parts like water, the old man continued his barbaric rape until he ejaculated inside the unconscious body of the small female child. If he had beheaded her, or had sawn her body into 2 halves, he wouldn't have caused her so much pain. He was numb to the terrible pain he was inflicting, and potentially fatal injuries he inflicted on his child bride, carrying on despite the fact that his bride had lost consciousness. Many people could not continue watching the movie after that particular scene. Some were interviewed right after the screening, and the common response was one of disbelief. None could fathom the idea that a law existed in his world, that would condone the perpetuation of barbaric tribal customs against female children, clothed with the attire of divinity. The outraged viewers likened the act to infanticide. Interviewers recorded outrage at the scene depicting the trial of the old man in the Sharia court of Jeddah, which justified and legalized the continued rape and captivity of the Indian slum girl. Some people screamed in anger inside the movie theater when the Islamic court cleared the old man of the hideous crimes of kidnap, rape, and imprisonment. It was heartbreaking to watch the 11-year-old Indian girl standing before the bearded religious judges in Jeddah, pregnant and denied any hope of rescue or respite from the claws of the religious system that treated her like chattel. She was the victim, but the Sharia court condemned her to live, against her will, the rest of her life under the tyranny and continuous rape of the Arab impostor. The movie was full of heartbreaking and outrageous scenes that forced all the viewers to dig deep into their emotional reserves. It provoked many to anger. The movie not only angered the Muslims and provoked its viewers, but aroused strong emotions across the board. It seemed no one was ambivalent. Everyone had strong opinions of the movie. Indians, Muslims, and Hindus alike disliked the movie. To the Hindus, it mocked and ridiculed their culture. They also believed that it exaggerated conditions in the slum to portray abject poverty. The Mumbai Police Department was far from pleased. Their commissioner commented that the movie portrayed Indian policemen as corrupt, dangerous criminals, rapists, robbers, extortionists, among others. Among the Bollywood circles, the movie was received with disdain. In fact, the movie highlighted many issues and received a correspondingly huge amount of criticisms from all quarters: the public, the media, Hollywood, and their Bollywood counterparts. Some scenes were hotly debated. In general, many people demanded the movie censured. They argued that the movie was worse than previously censured movies like The Bandit Queen, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Kama Sutra, A Tale of Love. During shooting the movie, the Miss India fell in love with her CO actor. For the first time in the history of vernacular films, the emotional scenes featuring love affair was filmed, in keeping with the movie theme of reality. Those wonderful days and months that Aphrodite Khan spent with her lover Uncle Jimmy were acted out in the flesh. The scenes emphasized the lovers' reenactment of the Kama Sutra tantric styles. For that reason, the movie was rated NC-17 and restricted to adult viewers. While many of the scenes were considered sexually explicit, many had to admit that it followed the storyline and gave the movie balance. If it wasn't for the true-to-life love scenes, the movie would feel no different from any other Hollywood docu horror release. The last segment of the Indian society, which took offense at the movie, were the Christians of the Bandra Church in Mumbai. The faux marriage of Sister Christina to Brother Bruno was declared to be a fabrication of the author. When the chief pastor of the church and his wife were interviewed, they claimed that Brother Bruno Fernandez and his family treated Sister Christina with much love and respect. They said further that it was Sister Christina, who defiled her marriage bed by deserting her lawful husband, Brother Bruno Fernandez, and shamefully cohabiting with a white man from America. Eventually, without divorcing her Indian husband, she traveled with the white guy to America and married him. Then, the chief pastor stated that he had some reliable information that Sister Christina was no longer Christian, but had backslid into being a full heathen. She cohabits, to this day, with her white male lover in a disgraceful adulterous relationship and bore him 2 bastard daughters. Regardless, there were hundreds of minutiae related to the movie, but the crux of the issues was the collective rage of the Muslims. Driven into a murderous rage, Muslims were behind hideous terrorist acts took innocent lives. For the first time in the West, a Canadian cinema was bombed, resulting in a casualty count of over 100 human fatalities, and even more injured. Across their border, a Muslim opened fire on a group of exiting cinema patrons, killing 6 and injuring more before he was gunned down by cops who responded to the scene. In yet another movie theater setting, 2 Muslim men were attacked and critically injured by young white men. Under interrogation, the assault perpetrators explained that after watching the movie, they felt that no Muslim men had a place in free American society and reacted accordingly. In Germany, one man entered an Islamic center and shot 3 Muslim men during their evening prayer. Likewise, the Muslim quid pro quo came about when 3 Muslims reacted violently after watching only half of the movie before rampaging. The trigger event was an overheard comment uttered by a white man to the effect of, "Fuck off the Prophet of Islam Muhammad who started all this shit." 3 girls and 2 boys suffered serious injury before the perpetrators were overpowered by the audience. The Muslim backlash hit its zenith when 5 men, 3 Somalis and 2 Arabs, broke into the villa of the movie director, Rita Smith, after gunning down her 2 armed guards. Then, they slaughtered her and her husband in cold blood. When the police arrived, Rita and her husband had been beheaded. Rita's head was placed on her chest and her mouth was filled with dust. All her 10 fingers were chopped off. Her husband's head was found in a garbage can. The brutality of the crime scene affected even battle-hardened police and forensic staff. The multitude of bruises, lacerations and incisions on the victims were a chilling reminder to the torture they were forced to endure before being killed. Eyewitness reports came pouring in from many of the neighbors. Most had cited them and provided law enforcement with accurate descriptions, which eventually led to the police raiding a local Somali hothouse where they detained their 5 suspects. Their prints and other forensic clues positively identified 3 of them. Interrogation revealed the existence of another 2 Arab accomplices in the Smith case. In the process of interrogating the 5 suspects, the police were able to foil another terrorist plot. This plot targeted the author of the book and her family, who had also had an acting role in the movie. The suspects readily admitted to their conspiracy and confessed that the director of the movie and the author of the book were their prime targets. After 2 months, France allowed the movie to be screened in Paris and Germany in Berlin. But, the UK banned the controversial movie and took the book out of the market. In some strange way, the book sold in large numbers as soon as the movie hit the streets. The New York Times declared the book, The Child Bride and the Old Man of Arabia, the bestseller of the year after it hit 10 million copies in 3 months. Translations appeared in many European countries. Chinese copies were produced in millions. India, who had initially approved the book sale, banned it after the movie was aired. After a short circuit of the major cities in India, the movie was banned too. As is always the case, millions of unofficial copies of the book and the movie were produced and illegally sold on the street pavements of Mumbai, Calcutta, New Delhi, and Madras. After 2 more movie theaters in Europe suffered Muslim attacks, many turned to watching copies of the movies in the safety of their own homes. Christina's own movements were restricted by the police and she was under advisement to avoid public appearances and speaking engagements. She accepted the security restrictions gladly in view of the success of the movie. The abject failure of her story in book form was fulfilled on the silver screen. She felt the weight of her indebtedness to Rita Smith and the magnificent job she had done, marred only by the lingering horror of the Smiths' murder. In retrospect, she now felt that the true heroes in the telling of her story were none other than the Smiths. Her goals achieved, Christina Lewinsky finally managed to find closure. She decided to spend the rest of her life with her loving husband and 2 lovely daughters in their mansion in a remote town far away from the hypocritical and sinful world.